Hello students, welcome back to my channel. Let us continue learning with structured query language. Today's is a session 5 and today we will be learning everything about SQL constraints, right? So before we start, directly get on to the different kinds of constraints, let us learn about what is a constraint means. So constraints are the rules enforced on data columns on a table. These are used to limit the type of the data that can go into the table. This ensures the accuracy and reliability of the data in the database. Okay, so constraints on an SQL. SQL constraint is nothing but we are putting certain conditions when we are writing a structured query. So when we are creating itself, we are putting a certain constraint, saying data should be in this way. For example, in an employee table, age should be greater than or equal to 18. Okay, this is a basic constraint which is available in a real world. So how am I going to apply that in a database is using the SQL constraint. So constraint could be column level or table level. Column level constraints are applied only to one column, whereas the table level constraints are applied to the whole table. The constraints available in SQL are foreign key, not null, unique, check. Also, we have primary key. So we will be seeing each one of them one by one. So in today's session, we will be mainly focusing on primary key itself. Okay. So we will also see how we can apply this primary key. We will insert certain values and we'll see that how these constraints work. Right. So let us directly move on to the primary key. So before getting to the primary key, constraints can be defined in two ways. Constraints can be specified immediately after the column. So that is what we discussed in the previous slide, that it can be a column level or it can be a table level. So whenever I mention it immediately after the column definition, then it is called as a column level definition. If the constraints can be specified after the columns are defined, this is called as table level definition. That is, first I will define all the column 1, column 2, I will define their data type and their names and everything. Once I complete that, if I'm defining any kind of a constraint, then it is called as a table level constraint definition. Okay, so when we do the example, it is going to be clear. So let us move on to the primary key. So we know that a primary key is nothing but a unique attribute. Okay, it is an attribute which uniquely identifies each tuple. So which means whenever apply a primary key, there should be two conditions. One thing is that value cannot be null. That is, whatever attribute I am, whatever tuple I am inserting. For example, if this is a table, okay, if it's an employee table, and if I'm taking employee ID as a primary key, which means I cannot have any tuple, any row with a null value over here. That is the first condition when it comes to the primary key. Second condition is you cannot repeat the value. That is, if it is 101, I cannot have another tuple with 101. That is why we will call it as a primary key. If a particular attribute is a primary key, then it should be able to individually identify. So whenever I say an employee with the employee ID 101, there cannot be another employee. It has to be unique so that I'll be able to detect that particular employee. So unique, the value should be unique. These are the two main conditions whenever we are declaring a primary key. So what happens to primary key constraint? This constraint defines a column or combination of columns which uniquely identifies each row and table. So remember, a primary key can be a single attribute or it can be more than one attribute. Combination of two columns are also fine if you are declaring a primary key. Okay. So if syntax to define a primary key at a column level. So first I will declare the column name. Then I will mention the data type and directly I will mention the primary key along with the column name, which means that this particular column is the primary key. So this is your column level declaration of a primary key. Otherwise, what I can do a table level. So how am I going to do? I will declare all the columns. Okay. After declaring all the columns, that is column 1, and I will mention its data type. Next column 2, its data type, etc. At the end, after declaring all the columns, I will mention the constraint. I can give a name for the constraint also. Then I will mention a primary key. And inside the bracket, I will mention which are the column are part of this primary key. It can be one or more. Okay. So in this example, I can mention primary key inside the bracket employee ID because employee ID is my primary key. Right? So when we do our practicals, it is going to be clear to us. So let us move to the practicals. So let us connect first. Okay. Now let us create a table and we will add primary key for that. Okay. So first let me create a table called as a employee. So create table employee. I will have ID and I'm going to declare the data type as number. Let me give 5. Okay. Now let us do a column level declaration first. So if it is a column level, if I'm taking ID as a primary key, so I will mention here itself that it is a primary key. Okay. So column itself, I'm mentioning that it is a primary key. Let me add some more values to this, as in some more attributes to this. I will take name. Okay. The table is being created. So if I'm describing this table, describe employee. As you can see here in the previous example, when we were executing null, there were no values. Now, if you see for ID, it is showing as not null. That is because ID is our primary key. And as I told you before, primary key cannot have a null values. That is the reason. Let us try and insert some values to this particular table. So insert into employee ID. Directly let me write values. ID 100, name Lina, department HR. Let me give age as 25. Okay. Now one row is created. Let us select. Now, as you can see, this is what the value we have entered into the employee table. We have ID as 100, name as Veena, department as HR, and 25. So whatever value we have entered, we have received. Okay. Now, let me add one more value. Let me try and add a different one. So let us change the ID value. Let me make this Rina and let it be HR and age, let it be 25. Now let us observe the output. So it is creating another row, right? So let me once again display the table to you. Now let us try to input a value. I told you that your value should be unique. What happens if I try to input another row with the same ID? Okay, let me change this name. Let me keep rest everything same. Okay, as you can see, it is throwing an error saying unique constraint valid. So why is it we have not mentioned anywhere unique constraint, but it is saying that we have violated the unique constraint. That is the reason I told you that whenever we talk about a primary key, so primary key is nothing but it is a combination of not null, okay, not null plus unique. So you cannot have a value which is null. If you try to give a null value into for an ID, so it will not take it. Plus, you have to give a different value. If you're trying to repeat the value, once again, it will give a error. Now, let us try and give a null value for the same input. Okay. So let me try and do that. use the same one. So here, let me put the value null. Okay. So see here, cannot insert null, okay, into system.employee.id. So we are creating an employee table inside the system database. System is a database. Inside that I'm having a table employee. Inside that I'm having an attribute ID. So you cannot enter null value, right? But can I, let me now try with a different values, okay? So we already have the name Veena. So let me just put the value Veena itself. And let me change the value. That is 1 or 2. Let me. So now see, observe this. I have only changed the ID value. Rest everything is same. Veena HR25 is already existing. But I'm changing from ID 100 to 102. Does this allow me to enter the value into the table? Okay, it is allowing. What is the reason? See, when in an organization, there is a possibility of two people having the same name. It can be different individual, but a single individual cannot have a say different employee ID. So that is the reason we have taken employee ID as a primary key. So that is the sole purpose of this, right? So let me do select star. So this is my table, okay? So I have two employees, names Veena and Veena, but their IDs are different. So I'm assuming, though they are from the same department and same age, I'm assuming that they are two different individuals because their IDs are different. So this is your column level. Now let us create another table. Create table. I will create a table EMP employee. Let us use the same set of values, okay? That is, once again, I will create ID, which is nothing but number of 5. Okay, now let us do a table level primary key declaration. So now I have ID number. Next let us take name, which is variable character of 6. Department, variable character of 6. And then, okay, I will keep only these many as of now. So primary key, if I want to declare it at the table level, then after I want only 3 columns. Okay, I will keep ID, name, and department. After I finish declaring with all the columns, now I will write the primary key values. That is, here I will say primary key of ID. So in SQL, I need not mention the constraint. Okay, so it is saying the name is already used by existing object, which means employee table. This particular name I've already used before. So let me just add one here. Okay, table created. So if you see here, let me just describe it. Describe employee 1. Okay, yes, this is my table where ID has a not null, which means ID is a primary key. Okay, this is how we will declare at the table level. So at the table level, all you have to do is after declare all your columns, you have to declare the primary key at the end, wherein which in the column level, immediately after mentioning the column name and the data type, you will mention the primary key. Okay, now there is another way of declaring a primary key. That is, once, suppose you have created, let me just create a table once again, create, let me use the same. Okay, table create I have. Let me just remove this ID. Now I am not creating primary key at all. Okay, so let me just change the employee 1. Let me give this name and let us create this table. Okay, table created. Let me just describe. Yeah. Okay, this is my table. As you can see, there are no primary key I have declared. Suppose after creating the table, I want to add the primary key. What can I do at that particular point of time? At this case, you can use the command. It is called as alter. Okay, so I will use alter table employee Okay, add primary key of ID. That's all I need to do. Semicolon, enter. Table alter. Now let us describe the employee and see. As you can see, ID has been created as a primary key. So this is another way of declaring a primary key. If at all you have already created the table and then if you want to add, then you can always use a alter table command. Suppose I have created a table, I have added a primary key. Later on, I realize that that is a wrong primary key I have added. I want to change it. I want to drop that, as in I want to delete that particular column as a primary key. I want to retain my column, but I want to delete the primary key constraint. So at that time, once again, I can use a alter table, that is alter table. The table I want to alter is employee, okay? And then I will use the command drop primary key. So if I do this, okay, sorry, once again it is right. I have not given space, employee drop primary key. Okay, table altered. What is the meaning of that? Let us just describe the employee and see. Okay, as you can see, the ID has no more the primary key here. Now, if you want to change, make some other column as a primary key, you can go ahead and do that. Now remember, since it is a single table, you are doing altering the table, adding the primary key, and dropping a primary key is absolutely fine. In case if you have more than one table and they are linked together with the help of a foreign key, in such situations, it is not possible. It will not allow you to add another. That is, it will not allow you to drop the column or to add a primary key. What is the meaning of that? So basically, relational database is nothing but I will have one table. If this is my primary key, I will have another table. And these two tables are connected with each other because of something called as a referential integrity. Okay, so this will become a foreign key here. So this foreign key is nothing but which is a primary key in some other table. So this is how it is linked. So whatever value I have here will be available over here also. Now, if you're trying to remove this, which means there is a problem to this link, so at that situation, it will not allow you to drop the primary key or to add the primary key. So remember, you can do all this, altering the table and remove the table, even if it is connected. If you're very careful enough in understanding how it is related to each other, then you can very well go ahead and do it. But when it is a single table, like you are using, when you're executing it, you can, of course, use it without any hassle, right? So this is about primary key constraints in today's session. In the next session, we will be learning everything about foreign key constraints. Till then, students, keep learning. Thank you for watching.